Welcome to episode 36 of the Creative Train podcast. As with all topics and discussions here on the podcast, everything comes from my or my guest's own experiences making or trying to make a living in the arts. And this episode is inspired by a conversation I had with a fellow musician about technology and our willingness, or not so much, to adapt and allow us or block us from creating a whole new paradigm in our creative expression. This isn't about music exclusively, but about us choosing not to become a martyr by allowing ourselves to see our creative vision stifled by sticking with tradition. Let's leave that old train in the siding, shall we? All aboard? The conversation I'm talking about was centered around music recording technology, the software and the peripheral devices and computers. When I first had my interest in recording music ignited, we were still in kind of the proverbial dark ages of using cassette tapes as our only real accessible medium outside of booking time at very expensive professional studios. Simple mono or stereo recordings were all we really could do at home, but the invention of the 4-track cassette recorder totally changed that for everyone. Well, everyone who could afford one. And not to bore you with the techie details, but the 4-track recorder finally allowed home recording enthusiasts the opportunity to multi-track our recordings. And we could layer instruments and vocals and so much more. It was truly revolutionary on the home-based level of the hobby. It was kind of tedious, but it did get the job done and got our sounds and our songs together and out there. Later, more advanced formats became available, but it was basically this system for quite a while. When I made my first album, Night Vision, I made the recordings, mixed, and more or less mastered it on a new system called a Virtual Studio from a company called Roland. Basically, it looked like a regular audio mixer, but it had built-in 3-gig hard drive, which was the biggest available at the time, and some rudimentary converters and effects which allowed me to record fully digitally. It was so incredibly motivating for me. Though the learning curve was very steep, I managed to get the recordings done during the calendar year of 2005 and released it in early 2006. But just as this new technology gained popularity due to its familiarness to traditional hardware, desktop-based recording started becoming a real thing for home users. Despite the cost, proprietary hardware requirements, and relative ease, it was eagerly adopted. And machines like my Roland Virtual Studio became obsolete within a few years. I was so hesitant to adopt the new computer format since I am totally not a computer guy and actually resented the specter of learning a whole new setup and process. And this went on for a few years until I finally buckled and bought my first audio interface to allow me to plug into it and have it translate my guitar signals into digital signals for the computer and software to record. A few fits and starts later, I was making music again and grew to understand and appreciate this new-to-me thing. My creativity blossomed as I got the new processes learned and new music started getting made. I'm not going to get into any more boring technical details, but I just wanted to describe my own experience of learning one thing and then having to ultimately abandon it for the new thing. I was out of my comfort zone. Unsure, I doubted my abilities, and honestly, I had a really difficult time being both the talent and the engineer. And this is still true to these days, at times, but I've learned a simple and effective process for what I do for myself and my clients, and that allows me the ability to create, produce, and engineer simultaneously. So back to the conversation. The fellow in question was kind of bemoaning the fact that he could not only find a reliable resource for his cassette tapes, but the machine itself needed much more maintenance and upkeep than he could handle. And he was saying that he feels like he has to abandon his backlog of yet to record material since he can't move on with his current setup. So I suggested that he move to a computer-based setup like I did, since I know he has a good computer, and I told him I would even help him get it set up and operational. And he wanted nothing to do with that. He expressed his gratitude for the offer, but could not see himself at his age moving to something totally new. Now, he's about the same age as me, so I know it's not too late, but our conversation ended with him declaring that he feels like he is done. I didn't know exactly at that moment how to handle the weight of finality and seeming despair he was expressing. So I just told him, I said, "You have my number, call me when you feel you're ready." And I've helped a few folks get their home-based recording rigs set up. It's actually part of my professional business. It usually goes well, and after a few basic training sessions, they're good to go on their own. And I really hope for this fella's creative sanity that he does reach out sometime. I'm all for keeping things in use that we call, quote, traditional. And what's really funny is that those old 4-track machines that I mentioned earlier are now being sought after for their crappy preamps, which adds some kind of sentimental vibe to new recordings, which have a tendency to become a little too clinical sounding with the amazing new digital converters so easily available to home users. Weird, eh? What was a $400 machine back in the early 80s is now often selling for more than that now, especially since the online forums were pretty resolutely damning the whole old school tape thing when these computer rigs started to become the norm. I'm so glad I finally took the plunge and reset the means, the manner, and the methods I use now. I still keep things very simple. Given what the software is able to let us do, I just don't think in those ways where automating dozens of backing tracks and harmonies are the thing to do. I want my music to hold up, even if I'm just a guy and guitar playing it. I don't want for the song to lose its impact if I've layered so many things in there that the song just doesn't stand on its own. And yes, I know this goes to the songwriting first and foremost, but I don't want to feel like I'm giving my audience half versions of the songs. I want the recordings to feature the words, the music, and one main instrument. And I know I'm not alone in this, but I can also tell you stories of folks telling me that these songs could be so much better with more harmony vocals, more string pads, more piano. I always ask my most trusted peers for their input on my songs. I always heed their advice. It just doesn't always make it into the final mixes. So all of this stuff might not fully apply to your particular creative pursuits, given that many of you might not need anything technology-wise or computer-based for your art and craft. But it can certainly apply in manners of trying new tools or finding innovative uses for old tools. New methods sometimes get rejected because someone younger than us first comes up with it. But that's no reason to outright reject this new thing. Try it. You might like it. The biggest thing is to be open and willing to trying new things. There is no honor in declaring your career or even your hobby dead because you don't like the new stuff being made or used. And you don't need to be a martyr holding the torch of traditional ways just because you think it'll be too hard to adapt. Some of the most highly regarded artistic creations were made using tools and technology that is long obsolete now. But always remember that it was likely that old stuff that first inspired you to create. There's your pep talk. Now go get to work. I know you're probably looking over your shoulder going, "What? Is he reading my mind? How did he know I was going through this dilemma?" We get really caught up in the ways that we do things, as we should. We're creating from our heart, from our soul. We're passionate about what we do. The means and method that we use to put those creations out there is just a small part of it, but we need it. We really, really need it. But if you face the specter of creating versus not creating, just because you don't want to adapt, where does that leave you? Probably pretty miserable. Go get to work. Do it now.